It's almost 80 years since Volkswagen introduced a van based on their first car, the Beetle, symbolizing freedom, creative expression, and the best of classic car design. In this episode, we'll review facts about the first-generation Volkswagen Microbus. Before we even proceed, kindly hit that like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Its origin is credited to Ben Pon. The Volkswagen Beetle had been founded almost a decade earlier, and Ben Pon, a Dutch Volkswagen importer, had already started importing the cars to the United States and other regions. In 1946, the importer visited the Wolfsburg factory to import Beetles, or KDF wagons, as they were then, to the Netherlands. On his way to the factory, he saw something that interested him more. A homemade parts mover, based on a Beetle chassis. It had the driver and controls sitting on top of the engine, with a large flat load bed at the front. This little vehicle was called the Plattenwagen. Ben Pon made a quick sketch and returned to Holland. He would later return to Wolfsburg in 1947 with more detailed sketches of his new concept, and a few criteria it had to meet. Namely, it had to be able to carry a load of 1,500 kilograms, and the driver and controls should be mounted at the front of the vehicle. The prototype's chassis problem. The Volkswagen Type 2 development began in 1948, and the first prototype was made in just 3 months. After initial testing, it became apparent that the modified T1 chassis wouldn't be sufficient for the job. Instead, a ladder chassis with a separate body was employed to improve the vehicle's durability. Poor aerodynamics. The first prototype had very poor aerodynamics with a drag coefficient of 0.75. Volkswagen engineers used the wind tunnel at the Technical University of Braunschweig to optimize the design. The first simple changes made were splitting the windshield and roofline into a V, which helped the production Type 2 achieve a drag coefficient of 0.44, exceeding that of the Beetle, which was 0.48. After the modifications, Volkswagen's new chief executive officer, Heinz Nordhoff, who was appointed on January 1, 1948, approved the van for production on May 19, 1949. The first production model rolled off the assembly line to debut on November 12, 1949. Only 2 models were offered initially. Only 2 models were offered. The Combi, with 2 side windows and middle and rear seats that were easily removable by one person, and the Commercial. The Microbus was added in May 1950, followed by the Deluxe Microbus in June 1951. In December 1951, an ambulance model was added, which repositioned the fuel tank in front of the transaxle, put the spare tire behind the front seat, and added a tailgate-style rear door. In August 1952, a single-cab pickup joined, changing the least of the Type 2s until all were heavily modified in 1968. The term barn door refers to buses made between 1949 and March 1955. Barn door buses appear similar to the later split buses on initial inspection, but there are quite a few differences once you review them more deeply. Firstly, the barn door bus has no peak above the windscreen, no tailgate, a small rear windscreen, and a much larger engine lid. The petrol tank is in the engine compartment to the right of the engine, and the spare wheel is mounted on the left-hand side. Ambulances featured a rear hatch, and pickups had a smaller engine cover. However, both of these models use a cut-down version of the original engine cover. The Commercial was Volkswagen's most basic bus, a simple panel van with no tailgate, no side windows, and 2 opening cargo doors on the respective passenger side. We hope you're enjoying this episode. Kindly hit that like button and subscribe as we review the remaining 5 facts about the first-generation transporter. It shared engines with the Beetle. Like the Beetle, the first transporters used the 1100 Volkswagen air-cooled engine, a 1,131cc rated 24 horsepower air-cooled flat 4-cylinder boxer engine mounted in the rear. In 1953, this was upgraded to the 1200, a 1,192cc engine rated at 30 horsepower. A higher compression ratio became standard in 1955, while an unusual early version of the 40 horsepower engine debuted in 1959. Today, 1959 models that retain that early engine are rare since the engine was discontinued almost immediately and no spare parts were made available. A heavy-duty transporter. In 1962, a heavy-duty transporter was introduced as a factory option. It featured a cargo capacity of 1,000 kilograms, or 2,205 pounds, instead of the previous 750 kilograms, or 1,653 pounds. It also came with smaller but wider 14-inch road wheels, and a 1.5-liter 42-horsepower engine. This heavy-duty bus was so successful that the 750-kilogram, 1.2-liter transporter was discontinued only a year later. The Volkswagen Samba, officially the Kleinbus Sonderausführung, small bus special version, and marketed in the United States as the Microbus Deluxe and Sunroof Deluxe, was the most luxurious version of the T1. Volkswagen started producing Sambas in 1951, and in 1952, the home market's name was changed to Sondermodel, special model. The precise origin of the Samba nickname is unclear. Sources refer to Samba cars, special train cars for dancing used by the Bundesbahn in the 1950s, while others suggest that it is an abbreviation for either Sonderausführung mit besonderer Ausstattung, special version with special equipment, or for Sonnendach-Ausführung mit besonderem Armaturenbrett, sunroof version with special dashboard. In the US, Volkswagen vans were informally identified by the window count. This model had 23 and 21 windows, including 8 high windows in the roof. The 23-window variant also had curved windows in the rear corners. The Samba had biparting doors instead of sliding doors, and could be ordered with a large fabric sunroof. Volkswagen advertised the Samba for tourist trips through the Alps. Standard paint finishes on the Samba were two-tone, usually with the upper bodywork in white. The lower bodywork carried a contrasting color, the area separated by a decorative strip. The roof carried slightly forward of the windshield at the front, creating an integral visor. The windows had chrome tables and the van had a more comprehensive dashboard than the normal T1. Its production ended when the T2 models entered the market. Some models of the Volkswagen Type 2 played a role in a historic episode during the early 1960s known as the Chicken War. France and West Germany had placed tariffs on imports of U.S. chicken. Diplomacy failed, and in January 1964, 2 months after taking office, President Johnson imposed a 25% tax, almost 10 times the average U.S. tariff, on potato starch, dextrin, brandy, and light trucks. Officially, the tax targeted items imported from Europe as approximating the value of lost American chicken sales to Europe. In retrospect, the Johnson White House audio tapes revealed a quid pro quo unrelated to chicken. The chicken tax directly curtailed the importation of German-built Type 2s in configurations that qualified them as light trucks, that is, commercial vans, panel vans, and pickups. Vans imported in passenger configuration were not affected. German production of the transporter T1 stopped after the 1967 model year to pave the way for the T2. However, the T1 was still made in Brazil until 1975, when it was modified with a 1968-79 T2 style front end and big 1972 vintage taillights into the so-called T1.5. What memories of the first-generation transporter do you have? Kindly share with us in the comment section below. Also, kindly like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to be notified when we upload the next video.